Hi there, my name is Kirti Bhadresa. I am excited to read for you today from my home in Calgary on Treaty 7 territory. I'm going to read for you from my short story collection entitled An Astonishment of Stars, which was published in autumn 2024 by ECW Press. The story I'm going to read from is entitled Daksha Takes the Cake, and it is the story of an aspiring writer who enters a baking competition in hopes of making enough money to sponsor her writing career. And this is from the middle of the book, once she's actually in the competition. The set was inside a giant white tent with a row of sharp peaks like perfectly whipped meringue. It was centered in a large field surrounded by manicured hedges. The grass was radiant green, and a bird chirped nearby, idyllically. It was as vivid in real life as it looked in the episodes she'd streamed at home. Daksha put on the cream-colored apron provided, her name embroidered in bold burgundy letters across her chest. It fit differently than her own apron did at home. Production already swirled around like hungry, meowing cats. She felt the seriousness of the situation then. Of the 11 other competitors, she counted 1 black woman, an Asian man, and a person wearing a hijab. Her and 1 dark-skinned camera operator. Daksha wondered if the other bakers had also been encouraged to draw from their backgrounds for their recipes. It was hot. She wished they could have set up someplace with air conditioning. Instead, ceiling fans just stirred the air like slow-moving whisks. In front of her was a large butcher block counter, a stainless cooktop with an oven below it, a narrow sink, and a standing mixer. There was a drawer that held mashers and spatulas, wooden spoons, and a shelf with all the pans she might need. For the first day, she brought her own toasted spice mix in a small jar, planning to include the blend into the finale. James, the baker at the station behind hers, made a whistling noise, not a shrill one, but the pull of air being sucked in between his teeth, a nervous sound. When Daksha turned to look at him, he said, "Good luck, then." He was sturdy-looking with reddish hair, a tattoo of a vine twisted up his forearm. She tried to picture herself back in her own small fourth-floor kitchen to steady herself. "Get set, go," said the exuberant host at the front of the room. Daksha said, "Good luck to you too," then was startled by the instant cacophony around her, the clatter of bowls, the whirring of mixers, so different from the meditational quiet she was used to in her own kitchen. It rattled her through the next round, the technical test, so that the raspberry filling of her handheld pies was too runny. It wasn't cooked down enough, she realized, which might have been okay if the mistake hadn't made the bottom crust soggy. James seemed genuinely sorry when he said, "Better luck next round, right?" The final challenge was to make petit fours, the kind of dainty French cakes one could find in a Parisian bakery, which they'd been advised to practice ahead of time. More than halfway through the round, as she was leaning over cakes that hadn't risen as they did at home, as if they were underbaked, Daksha felt something damp on her face. She wiped at her cheek with the back of her hand, thinking it was sweat, but there was a tremor in her fingertips too. Then her nose started to run. Daksha thought, stunned, "I'm crying, now." James said, "Hey, you okay there?" Realizing how she was losing time and losing resolve, Daksha just felt more overwhelmed. James left his own nearly completed miniature cakes on the counter, came around and said, "Do you need a hand?" The production crew noticed as James approached and slid toward them. Daksha glanced at the timer and sidestepped the video cam that still watched her closely, hungry for such depth of feeling. The videographer followed as she splashed her face with cold water at the sink at the back of the room, making her mascara smear, so she looked tired, she noticed as she checked her face in the round mirror beside the sink. Daksha realized that she was, in fact, very, very tired. She didn't finish on time after that. Her hands shook as she iced. Her still gummy cakes looked amateur, incomplete without the fondant roses she had planned but never got to. Daksha thought of her social media friends, of Brenda, watching her as the judges evaluated the cake, shook their heads. One said, "What a shame. The flavors aren't bad, but your execution is a disaster." Maybe the psychologist was wrong, Daksha thought. Maybe the character I created for myself is fatally flawed. The plot, the one where she ended up winning the competition and then spent the rest of her life writing books at that majestic imaginary desk, suddenly seemed impossible. To her relief, Daksha was the first one out of the competition. Thank you for listening.